The stars above the enemy world were quiet, like the whole galaxy was holding its breath. Far beyond the glowing rings of that system, in the dark where no sensor could reach, a massive human battleship drifted like a silent shadow, its black armor absorbing the light of distant suns, its presence almost unnatural, like something built not by engineers, but by the cold hand of war itself. The ship did not shine, it did not roar, it only waited. The way a predator waits in tall grass before the kill, on the surface of the planet below. Cities glowed with alien lights, towers stretched into the clouds. People laughed, drank, and celebrated their power. They believed their fleets made them safe. They believed their enemies were weak. They believed humanity would never dare to fight back. They did not know that something far above them was already watching. Inside the battleship, the air was cold, every light dimmed to blood red. Rows of human officers sat behind silent consoles, their faces calm, their eyes sharp. No one spoke, no one needed to. They all knew why they were here. This was not a war of conquest. This was not a war of defense. This was a reckoning, deep in the center of the ship. Past layers of steel and silence, a single order waited to be spoken. It was the kind of order that would end a world. A young operator sat with trembling fingers, her heart beating slowly against the soundless hum of the engines. She had seen what this ship could do. Everyone aboard had, once the ship moved, there would be no turning back. No second chance. No survivors above their heads. The giant rail cannons and plasma silos hummed softly, like a beast breathing before it strikes. The alien fleet orbiting the planet was large. Hundreds of ships floating like a glittering wall of confidence. Their commanders joked, their pilots relaxed. No alarms, no fear. They believed their scanners could detect anything, but they never learned how to see something that didn't want to be seen. The human battleship had no name on their records, no signature in their systems. It was invisible. It was death moving with purpose on the bridge. The captain stood like a statue, his hands behind his back, his face a mask of quiet rage. He had lost everything to this enemy years ago, and tonight he would deliver what humanity had promised when the first colony burned. He whispered softly, "No mercy," and the crew understood. They had trained for this moment. They had dreamed of this moment in the darkness of deep space. The alien world was known for its arrogance. Its people mocked humans as primitive, weak, emotional. They saw humanity as nothing more than another colony to crush. They had struck first. They had burned settlements. They had left children frozen in the void. And now, as their leaders danced in their shining towers, they had no idea that their laughter would be the last sound they ever made. The human battleship floated closer, so slowly that even the stars seemed to tremble. Its thrusters whispered softly, invisible to every scanner in the sector. Down below, no one saw the sky dim. No one noticed the small flicker on their horizon. No one looked up, because no one thought they needed to. In the command center of the alien fleet, one officer frowned. A sensor screen blinked for half a second and then went black. He tapped it, thought it was a glitch, laughed, and returned to his drink. He did not know that the moment that small blink appeared, the end of their world had already begun. In the void, the human battleship unfolded its weapon arrays like the wings of some ancient monster. Metal plates shifted, massive guns rotated, engines warmed like the heartbeat of something alive. Lights blinked across the hull, soft and red, as if the ship itself was awakening from a long sleep. The crew watched their screens, breathing slow, heart steady. Some whispered silent prayers, not for their lives, but for the silence after the fire. The stars above the planet seemed to grow colder. The galaxy seemed to lean in to listen. Every satellite, every station, every ship in orbit would soon hear a sound they had never heard before. The sound of their own end, in the quiet before the first shot. Time stretched like a thin thread ready to snap. In those seconds, the captain lowered his head, closed his eyes, and gave the single order that would change everything. The order did not roar. It did not shake the ship. It was quiet, almost gentle, like a stone dropped in a still lake. But its echo reached every corner of the void. "Engage," he said. And the beast above the alien world opened its eyes. The ground below still celebrated. Light still danced across their cities. Children still played, soldiers still drank. But in the black above their heads, a force older than mercy had been set free. And it would not stop. It would not forgive. The silence before the storm was over, and the storm itself was already falling. Years before the ship appeared in their sky, this alien world had laughed at Earth. Their leaders stood in their shining halls and called humans weak. Their generals mocked human fleets as outdated scrap. They saw humanity as a fading spark, too small to matter. They believed the galaxy belonged to them, and no one could ever challenge their power. They invaded colonies on the edge of human space, burning towns and outposts, calling it a lesson for daring to resist. Their warships crushed defenses like paper. Their soldiers raised their flags over shattered homes, and the screams of the survivors echoed in the void. The council recorded everything, but they never forgot. Every burned settlement, every destroyed city became a quiet promise. A promise that one day the stars would remember. The alien council believed that humans would beg, that they would kneel to survive. They didn't understand what happens when humanity is cornered. They didn't know what happens when humans lose everything. Earth didn't cry, it built. It built in silence, far from their scanners. Beneath the ice of Europa, inside black hangars buried in rock, humanity created something not meant for war as they knew it, but for revenge that would shake entire systems. While the alien empire celebrated their victory, humanity was forging a weapon in the shadows. Engineers worked without names, soldiers trained without sleep, and pilots whispered to one another about the day they would return. They gave the ship no name because they wanted the galaxy to give it one in fear. Back on the alien world, propaganda filled every screen. Their leaders stood before their people and said, "Humans are broken. Their spirit is dead!" Crowds cheered, banners waved, and their soldiers smiled with arrogant pride. They didn't see the quiet movements across human colonies, the way industries turned silent, the way old fleets disappeared from known space, the way transmissions went dark. They mistook silence for surrender. But it was the silence of a predator watching from the dark, the silence of a hammer just before it falls. Inside human war councils, there was no shouting, no big speeches, just cold decisions. Every attack on their colonies became a stone in the foundation of a single mission, to make the galaxy understand that humans would never kneel again. Every burned city became a line carved into the steel of that black battleship. Every death became a whisper inside its silent halls. The crew who would one day board it were chosen not for their strength, but for their resolve. They had lost families, homes, everything. They didn't wear medals, they carried silence. A silence sharper than any blade. The alien empire grew careless. They pushed further into human territory. Built bases on stolen worlds. They boasted on galactic channels. They mocked human weakness openly. They believed their war fleets were untouchable, that no one would ever dare face them. They never asked why the humans had stopped replying. They never asked why Earth was quiet, why the colonies went dark, why the border had no activity. They thought they had won, but they were only waiting for something they could not understand, something they could not detect, something already on its way, in the capital city of the alien empire. When Senator warned his council, he had seen how humans fight when they are desperate. He had seen their history, their old wars, their fire, but no one listened. They laughed at him too, called him a coward, told him humans were finished. They didn't know that at that very moment, above their world, the ship they mocked was already in position, silent, patient, alive. The arrogance of this world had been its crown, its pride, its shield. They believed it made them strong, but it only made their fall easier. They thought they ruled the stars, but they had only painted a target on their own sky. The night above them now belonged to someone else, someone they had called weak, someone they had laughed at. and that someone was coming with fire. The ship was not born in a dry dock like other warships. It was built in silence, far beneath Europa's frozen crust, where no light or satellite could see. No sound of hammering reached the stars. No news escaped the shadows, only the slow, steady heartbeat of human hands building something the galaxy was never meant to face. Its armor was forged from black alloy that swallowed light. Its engines ran without a sound. Its weapons were crafted to burn worlds. It was not meant to patrol or protect. It was meant to erase, to make an empire regret every cruel laugh it ever gave. The galaxy called it a myth, a ghost, something that couldn't exist. But it was real, and it was waiting. The alien empires thought they had mapped everything, every station, every shipyard, every human base, but they had missed the one hidden beneath the ice, where engineers worked without sunlight, without names, their faces pale, their eyes focused. On the blueprints of a weapon so powerful it could end fleets with a single strike. The project had no public name, only a number whispered in secure rooms. The people who worked on it didn't ask questions. They just built. They built for the dead colonies, for the burned cities, for the voices that never answered back. This ship had no flag, no call sign, no registration. It didn't need one, because when it appeared, names wouldn't matter, only fear. It was built to bend gravity around itself, to disappear from scanners like smoke in a storm. It could jump between systems faster than detection could react. It was designed not to fight fleets, but to end them before they could breathe. Its weapons didn't roar, they whispered. Its presence didn't announce. It devoured the galaxy's strongest. Empires would never understand what was coming until their skies were already burning. Inside the ship, there were no loud halls or ceremonial flags, just dark corridors humming softly, every panel sealed, every door silent. The crew, trained for months in secret, selected not from the strongest, but from the ones who had lost the most. They carried no medals, no speeches, only cold resolve. They didn't speak about honor or glory, they spoke about precision, silence, and the strike that would end the arrogance of a world. Their faces were calm. Their eyes carried the weight of everything taken from them. They were the storm inside the machine. The captain of the ship was a man carved from war. His family lost on a colony the aliens burned years ago. He had stood in the ruins of a city where children had frozen in the vacuum. And in that moment, he had made a promise not to forgive. Not to talk, but to build something the stars would fear. He had led this project with a single belief. Humanity may be small, but when cornered, it becomes fire. And fire doesn't ask permission. The Council never confirmed the ship's existence. They let the galaxy believe the rumors were just stories, because fear itself was a weapon. Whispers spread through alien fleets about a dark shape that moved without sound. Entire scouting groups disappeared in deep space without trace. Some called it a shadow, some called it a curse, but the truth was worse. It was real, and it was waiting for the day it would be unleashed. And that day had come, as it floated above the enemy world now, engines cold, weapons ready. Hidden in the black, it carried not just steel and fire, but the silent rage of an entire species. The ship that should not exist was no longer a rumor. It was here, it was awake, and soon the galaxy would understand what humanity had built in the dark. The night above the alien world was calm, the sky clear and full of stars. People walked through glowing streets and towering markets with no fear. They believed they were untouchable. Their fleets were their pride, their shields their comfort. They thought no one would dare attack them in their own sky. But far beyond the range of their scanners, in the black where light could not touch, the human battleship moved, its massive shadow sliding through space like a silent blade. Its systems locked onto the planet below, and its crew waited for the signal that would change history. Inside the command bridge, the captain stood still, the low red lights reflecting in his eyes like embers, his hands folded behind his back. Not a single sound came from the crew, no countdown, no speeches, only breath and silence. This was not a battle. This was a strike. The alien defense network wrapped around their planet like a shining net was filled with ships, hundreds of war cruisers floating proudly, blinking with blue lights. Their patrols were lazy, their commanders half asleep. Some laughed as they shared drinks and stories, believing nothing could break their wall. They did not know that death was already inside their orbit. A faint pulse went through the human battleship's hull, like the deep breath of a sleeping giant. One word echoed through the comms in a calm voice. Fire! The first shot came not as a roar, but as a whisper, a single beam of pure white. Light sliced through the dark like lightning. It traveled faster than anything they could detect. By the time the alien scanners saw it, it was already too late. The beam struck the largest ship in orbit, a battle fortress armed with enough firepower to burn a moon, and in 1 second it turned into a sun, a ball of fire and broken steel. The shockwave rippled across their fleet. Their alarms screamed too late. Their commanders shouted orders they would never finish. One by one, their proud warships were erased from the sky like ink wiped from paper. Panic spread across the alien fleet like fire through dry grass. Their scanners couldn't find the attacker. Their radar showed nothing but black. Their weapons fired in every direction, hoping to hit a ghost they couldn't see. But the ship didn't move like theirs. It moved like smoke. It struck again, another beam, another ship gone, then a third, a fourth. Their formation collapsed in less than a minute. Soldiers inside the alien ship shouted, "What is hitting us?" But no answer came. Their commanders screamed for shields, but the shields burned away like paper under flame. They had built their empire on fear, but now they were the ones trembling. On the surface below, the people of the planet looked up at their sky as it turned. Red flashes of light danced like silent fireworks. They didn't know it was the end of their fleet. Their cities kept celebrating. Their children laughed. They thought it was some kind of military exercise. But the officers on the ground who understood what was happening began to run, their communication towers filled with screams and static. "We're being hit! Shields down! Unknown attacker!" The human ship gave no warning, no demand, no mercy. It simply kept firing. The captain watched the screens with calm eyes, no joy, no anger, just a quiet focus that only comes from someone who has seen too much to celebrate. "Second volley," he ordered softly, and the guns responded like thunder hidden inside a whisper. Massive kinetic rounds left the barrels, glowing white against the darkness, and when they struck, alien cruisers folded like fragile shells. Their debris rained down toward the planet like burning stars. One officer whispered, "They don't even see us." And the captain replied, "They never did." For the alien fleet, this was not a war. It was erasure. Their greatest ships had lasted less than 10 minutes. Their communications burned with panic. Their defenses collapsed like a wall of sand against a storm. The sky that once belonged to them now belonged to something they didn't understand, something they had laughed at, something that had come with silence instead of speeches. Above the burning fleet, the human battleship remained still, its weapons glowing faintly, like a predator satisfied with its first kill. And as the last cruiser exploded, lighting up the night with a silent fireball, the alien world finally understood. Something too late. This was not an enemy they could bargain with, not a war they could win. This was a punishment. And the punishment had only just begun. The first explosions in the sky were so bright that the night itself seemed to shatter. People on the ground stared up with confused faces, thinking it was just a military drill or fireworks from some celebration. But their smiles faded fast when pieces of burning ships began falling through their atmosphere like dying stars. The once proud defense fleet that had guarded their world for decades was gone in minutes. Their sky, once their shield, had turned into their graveyard. Panic hit the capital like a wave. Alarms screamed through the cities. Military officers ran through crowded streets, shouting orders no one could follow, and the sound of fear spread faster than any signal. Above it all, the human battleship hovered in orbit like a black sun, silent and patient, its guns still hot, its engines cold. Inside the alien command centers, chaos ruled. Generals shouted at flickering screens, their communications jammed by something they couldn't track. Their orders died in static, their voices broke into panic. The fleet was gone, their satellites burned, their defenses shattered. They had no eyes left to see what was coming. They only knew something was up there, a shadow, a ghost, something they could not fight. On the streets, families grabbed their children and ran. Traffic clogged every road. Sirens howled. Soldiers fired into the sky in blind fear, not even knowing what they were shooting at. Their empire had been built on power, on the idea that no one could touch them. And now they were naked before the storm. In orbit, the human battleship's targeting systems locked onto the planet's surface. The captain stood on the bridge, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the glowing screens. He saw their cities, their military bases, their command hubs, the places where their invasions had been planned, where human colonies had burned, and his jaw clenched in silence. The ship didn't aim for civilians, it aimed for the heart of their war machine. One order, one press of a finger, and their power would turn to ash. "Initiate surface strike," he said calmly, and the room obeyed. From the belly of the human ship, giant kinetic rods launched toward the planet like silent gods of war. They moved so fast, the air itself screamed when they entered the atmosphere. The first one struck a military command center outside the capital. The explosion ripped the ground open like the earth itself was roaring. Shockwaves spread for miles, turning buildings to rubble. The second rod hit their largest shipyard, the one where they built the fleet that once bombed human colonies. It vanished in a flash of white and black. Panic became something worse, desperation. The alien leaders, who had laughed at humans for years, now stood in their underground chambers shouting orders to ghosts. Their generals had no fleets to command. Their soldiers had no shields to hide behind. Their empire, built over centuries, was collapsing in hours. They tried to broadcast surrender messages into the void, begging for a chance to speak. But no signal reached the human ship. No answer came. The silence from above was louder than any threat. Across the cities, flames rose like mountains, towers cracked and fell, roads split open under the weight of shockwaves. Soldiers who once marched proudly now stumbled through fire and smoke, their weapons useless, their training meaningless. People screamed the same question again and again: who is attacking us? But no one had an answer they wanted to hear. In their hearts they already knew. They had mocked a species they didn't understand. They had poked a sleeping giant, and now the giant had opened its eyes. The human ship moved slowly through orbit, its engines like the breath of a beast, its black hull reflecting the fire of the planet below. From the ground it looked like a dark moon, watching as everything burned. In the alien capital, an officer fell to his knees in front of a dead screen, whispering, "It's them, the humans." His words echoed through the bunker like a curse, because everyone had heard the stories they called myths, of a ship built under the ice, of a ghost that carried vengeance in silence. They had called it a legend. Now it was rewriting their sky. The planet screamed that night, not with one voice, but with millions, a chorus of fire, fear, and regret. Their empire had thought itself immortal, untouchable, eternal. But humanity had no interest in their pride. It came not to negotiate, not to talk, but to end what they had started. And as the fires spread and the ground cracked, one truth became clear to everyone who still breathed. The storm had only just begun to fall. The firestorm on the alien world burned so bright that distant satellites in nearby star systems could see its glow, like a second sun tearing through the night. Transmission networks across the galaxy crackled with static. Fleets and stations in distant corners paused their routines as the impossible unfolded live before their eyes. The greatest war machine of a proud empire had fallen in less than a single night. Entire civilizations, once sure of their power, stared at their screens in silence, listening to the endless stream of distress calls coming from the dying planet. Every voice trembling, every scream soaked in panic. "They're here! Humanity, help us!" the alien generals cried through the void, but no help came. No one dared move. In orbit, the human battleship floated above the burning planet like a judge over the guilty, its black hull reflecting the flames below. Its guns silent now, but still aimed downward, like a reminder that it could strike again if it wished. Its engines whispered softly, a sound that sent chills through the entire sector. The crew inside didn't cheer, didn't celebrate. They stood in their positions with steady eyes, knowing this was not victory. It was a message. Humanity had been ignored, mocked, stepped on. Now it was making sure no one would ever forget its voice again. On the bridge, the captain stared at the image of the ruined cities. His face didn't move. His voice was steady when he said, "Broadcast it." A signal burst from the battleship's comm array, flooding every channel in the quadrant. It was short, cold, and clear. "We warned you." Those 3 words echoed across star systems, through outposts, council chambers, enemy fleets, and distant trade hubs. Every leader who had once mocked Earth felt those words like a blade pressing against their throat. Humanity had not shouted. Humanity had whispered. And the whisper was louder than any war drum. Across the galaxy, old enemies of the alien empire froze. They had fought for decades to bring that empire down, but humanity had done it in a single night. Diplomatic channels buzzed with panicked debates. Admirals stood in war rooms staring at the playback of the attack, watching the alien fleet disappear in seconds, watching entire cities vanish from orbital strikes they couldn't even track. The question wasn't what happened. The question was, what is humanity now? In hidden star stations, smugglers and traders whispered stories that spread like wildfire. "The ghost ship is real," some said. They didn't even see it coming. They begged, but it didn't answer. Fear moved faster than light that night. Empires that once dismissed humanity as a minor power now redrew their maps, changed their plans, shifted their fleets, because they understood something simple. This was not a random attack. This was a warning to everyone. Alien leaders across the stars gathered in their high councils with pale faces and shaking hands. "If they can do this to them," one whispered, "they can do it to us." "We shouldn't have provoked them," another muttered, their voices low, heavy with a fear they had never felt before. Humanity had been quiet for too long, too patient, building its weapon in the shadows. And now that it had shown itself, no one could ignore it. Back on the human battleship, the crew stood silent. They didn't raise flags or sing songs. They just listened to the silence left behind, the kind that follows after thunder. In that quiet, they knew the galaxy had changed forever. The war wasn't over, but the balance of power had cracked like glass. From this day, every empire would think twice before raising a hand against Earth, not because humanity was loud, but because humanity had proven it didn't need to be. As the transmission looped one last time, "We warned you," it carved itself into history. Empires shivered, fleets held position. The galaxy was listening now, and the message was clear. Humanity was no longer the hunted. It was the storm. The fires still burned across the alien world. A planet that once called itself untouchable now lay shattered. Its great towers turned to ash, its proud fleets erased from the stars, its people staring at a sky they no longer recognized. The black silhouette of the human battleship floated silently above it all, a shadow without a name, a shape that would haunt the survivors forever. In that moment, no one below dared speak, no one dared move, because they understood something far more terrifying than the destruction. They understood this ship could have taken everything, but it didn't need to. Its power spoke louder than any threat. Inside the bridge, the air was still. The red lights reflected on cold steel, on silent faces, on a captain whose eyes never left the burning world below. One officer whispered, "Targets neutralized." Another said softly, "No resistance left." There were no cheers. There was no joy. Only quiet breaths and the distant hum of the engines, like the calm heartbeat of a creature that had finished the hunt. The captain closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the colonies that had burned, the faces lost in the war no one else cared about. This was not victory, it was balance, a promise kept in silence. The ship began to shift, its massive thrusters turning away from the ruined planet, as if it had never been there at all. To the outside world, it looked like the night itself was moving, sliding back into the dark where no one could follow. No beacon, no trail, no signal, just vanishing. For the alien survivors who hid in the ruins, the image of that silent retreat would burn into their memory for the rest of their lives, a reminder of what they had awakened when they mocked the wrong species. Across the galaxy, news of the strike traveled faster than any ship. Council halls were silent, war rooms frozen, and empires that once laughed at Earth now kept their fleets close to home, whispering warnings to each other in quiet panic. No one wanted to speak the ship's name because it had none. They called it the Ghost, the Silent Flame, the Black Star. No one truly knew where it came from, only that when it arrived, worlds fell. On board the Battleship, the crew returned to their stations like they had simply completed a duty. There were no medals, no speeches, no songs. They didn't need glory because the message had already been written in fire. Humanity had always been underestimated, dismissed as weak, soft, emotional. But tonight the galaxy learned the truth. When humans go silent, it's never surrender. It's the calm before something unstoppable. The captain stood on the observation deck, watching as the planet became smaller and smaller behind them, its orange glow fading into the black sea of stars. A single line left his lips, quiet, steady like the ship itself. On to the next. The crew didn't ask where. They didn't need to. The galaxy was wide, and there were others who had forgotten who they were dealing with. The stars swallowed the ship as if it had never existed. No trace, no echo, just a silence that hung heavy over every empire that watched. And somewhere in the dark, a new fear was born, not of war, not of invasion, but of the quiet, patient wrath of humanity. The Ghost had returned to the void, and the galaxy would never sleep the same again.